easier than it is for me to do.
Push it!
You're welcome to take a close look, verify what you see is real. Verify that is pretty deep. It is really in there, right through my body. And you can make note as I do this that I have not a lot of distress going on as I push it. The fact that it was kind of resisting was giving me more distress than the fact that it was going through me. Now, some people in the audience, you might have noticed them, they're squirming, they're screaming, they're having a very bad reaction to this. This should demonstrate to you that I'm somebody with something going through my body. I'm having a very kind of relaxed reaction to it. Somebody not even touching this, somebody not being touched by the skewer, just seeing it visually, imagining what it feels like, is having kind of a painful negative reaction. That shows that your mind does in fact react how you behave. Now I'm going to show some more demonstrations as we go on. But at first I'm going to get this one out. You know, I think it got kind of pent up going through. But it was right, there'll be no blood, but I know some of you want to see blood. Let's see what happens. Now, when I became interested in this, I read a book. I've told this in interviews, people might have seen it. I read a book when I was very young. It was in my elementary school library. I haven't told anybody the name of the book. But it's Secrets of Magic by Walter D. Gibson. Secrets of Magic, Ancient and Modern. This is a book about magic, but in it had descriptions of people in India doing things like that, skewers through the cheeks. Other parts of the body had descriptions of people in sideshows swallowing swords, descriptions of people in countries walking on red-hot coals, and I thought, well, that's something really cool, that's something I'd like to see. But nobody was really doing it, I found out. So I had to search and find more and more about this type of activity until I learned some of it, taught myself over many, many years, had a long time interest in it, kind of a strange hobby of mine. And I began performing, and even as I began performing, I was wondering what is the real basis of this, and kept researching and going deeper and deeper into the research. One thing you hear is the word fakir. It's a Hindu fakir doing this, and where does that all come from? I began to research that, and I'm going to share some of what I've learned. One is the word fakir, which you hear a lot. It's a word that's become very corrupted. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But the real word is an Arabic word, and it means, and this is also kind of misinterpreted as well, it means a poor person, somebody who has nothing. Sometimes people translate that and say it means beggar, somebody who's begging for money. And this is kind of put out by the fact that some fakirs take a vow of poverty and perform these feats and beg for a living. But not all of them do. What this means, it's got a spiritual meaning. It means that you have nothing, that the things you have are temporary. Like all your possessions, you won't have them after you're dead. Your body you won't have after you're dead. And you realize that, and it changes the way you live your life. There are fakirs who are very worldly in possessions out there, and not everybody who is a fakir puts skewers through themselves. In fact, the people mostly called fakirs, or have kind of taken the name that's been given to them, is the Hindu fakir, probably would be more accurately called a sadhu. And you can see these people in India, and they'll be doing like feats that are purposely putting themselves in a state of discomfort. And I believe this is because they've kind of taken a vow of poverty and taken it one step further, and not only they're going to abstain from some of the worldly pleasures, but they'll take it a little further and abstain from some of the worldly comforts that you just take for granted. And they'll do things like hold their arm over their head for 10 years. I mean, I'm not making that up. You can see that in India, you go around, people, their arms withered because they've had them over their head for so long. These are the people you probably see laying on beds of nails. And in India, you can't afford nails because you're very poor. You lay on a bed of thorns or cactus. And this is probably where the bed of nails comes over to the sideshow. It's from India. People have changed it for the modern time. Now there are different types of fakirs, and the word, which also means fakir, is dervish. And maybe I'll switch to that word because this word fakir, it sounds, especially in English, like a few other words. They don't have a pleasant meaning to some people. People think it means somebody faking something, or they mean it means something else. In Europe, if you say I'm a fakir, everybody knows what you're talking about. Say I do a fakir act, usually people know what I'm talking about. Even in Montreal, people know the word. But the U.S., some people think it is used as people's names. I think I'm talking about somebody's name or something else. So dervish is a name. You might be familiar with the dervishes that spin, the whirling dervishes. These are the ones you're most familiar with, and people like that. There are other Rumi who did some poetry. He's a dervish. People like his poems a lot. But the type of dervish which does this type of feat is called sometimes referred to as a howling dervish. If you look in the literature, you look for that search for howling dervish, you'll find references to it. And why they're called howling dervishes is a part of the ceremony they do. In that ceremony, it's just a small part of it. There's a lot of body motions and a lot of change of the breathing. And there's chanting of names. And I want to say that the dervishes are kind of a mystical branch of Islam. So one thing is there, of course, the fundamentalists have made them illegal in most countries where they have power. In Turkey, for a long time, it was illegal. Until very recently in Afghanistan, it was illegal to be a Sufi. Like much of the kind of mystery, self-realization parts of major religions like the Kabbalah or the Gnostics and other religions. Now, when they're doing the ceremony, it's called a zikr, which means remembrance. And this is a part of it. And one thing which happens, and I found in many of these people who do these type of feats, is a change of focus, whether it's hypnosis, meditation, or part of some religious ceremony. When you do this, you completely change what your mind is focusing on. And this is when these feats will happen. The point is, some people will misinterpret this. They have their own reactions because of the culture they live in. They think a lot of times these people are getting off on pain. They're doing these painful things, and that's bringing them to some spiritual area. Well, that's pretty much the opposite of what's happening. They're going to some spiritual realm, and that's taking them away from the pain. It's nothing about pain at all. When they do this correctly, there's no awareness of the pain. It's you taking yourself, the ego, away, and therefore, because you're not thinking about yourself, there's no thinking of I'm in pain, because you've pretty much taken the I out of it. Now, as I said, it's a small part of a bigger ritual. One other interpretation of this is the fact that they think that's all it is. This is some shortcut. This is some weird shortcut to enlightenment. But the fact is, the groups I've actually read about this, I've studied with some groups. The groups that do this is a small part of it. In fact, it's a kind of a dangerous part, and that mostly in the West, they won't allow this to happen. And the reason is because people get focused just on that part and forget everything else. They'll either have this thing where they get fixated on this skewering and these other feats happening and not pay attention to anything else. Or they'll be so shocked, because the Western culture has no real idea of what's going on. They'll be so shocked they'll repulsed and they'll run away from it. So you'll rarely ever see in the United States these type of activities happening. This is something I might close the show with. It's going to do a skewer. It's going to go in my mouth, go through the glands, go through the muscle, and pop out under my chin, next to my throat. Now, I usually just do one of these, but because I like you guys, I'm going to do two at once.
like that. Come a little closer.
He's a god.
Oh, God. I'll explain that. I'll answer that question.
Yeah, do balloon animals.
Ah.
Here, here.
Just a little bit of blood. Okay. Now that I've got your attention once again, a lot of things I think from the sideshow, from the circus in fact, came when explorers went to other countries, and a lot of this was from the turn of the century, of that last century. People were going exploring India, Africa, wherever. They'd see these strange creatures, elephants and tigers, and bring them back. The first kind of circuses were like zoos almost that traveled, and people couldn't see these things. They'd go to the circus, and it's all full of all these strange things. As well as the animals, people would see people performing these bizarre. I'm the one who's risking my feet and credibility, I suppose. Maybe. Okay, but you know, I've been doing this lecture. I know what you guys really want to see, though, this entire time. I showed you some demonstrations. You want to see some sideshow stunts? Yeah. I haven't been able to do as many as I normally do, even in this lecture. I usually do that, as I said, with the firewalk as well. But I'm going to show you something just to show you the strange mixture of things that happen on a sideshow stage. Here I am. I'll tell you one thing is that when the sideshow started bringing fakirs over, people actually from Middle Eastern countries were brought over to Ripley's, believe it or not, exhibitions for World's Fairs. And a lot of the words that you know from sideshow are actually kind of corruptions of Arabic words. In fact, the word ballyhoo, I forget what it's a corruption of, but it's actually an Arabic word calling people to the stage because they couldn't understand English. Now what I'm going to show you, am I claiming it's a mystical feat? No, I don't know if you don't want to see mystical feats. You want to see some sideshow stunts. But this is something weird from India. It is, well, let's just say I'm not going to use any rubber cement. I'm not going to be able to buy this at Lewis Tannins or anything like that. I'm going to take a piece of string. I'll call this the David, but no, I'm going to call this the, we'll call it the string thing. I'm going to swallow this here string. Mike, sir. Well, what can I tell you about this stunt? It's a strange audience to do it before. I didn't think I was going to do this. I don't know. But, you know, the fact is, about the only thing that hasn't happened here yet is people eating bugs. And that's very odd. Don't you think? How come nobody ate a bug the entire performance time? It's not too late for somebody to come up and do it. But
Breakfast.
Scalpel. Cutting into myself, and if you're a sword swallower, and many of us are, You might know where the stomach is located. Where I'm pressing with a scalpel. If you press down on your stomach, at some points you might feel the tip of a sword in there. You might feel that beer gurgling in there. Using some forceps. I think I've got it. I want you to take a close look. And verify it's coming out of the cavity. Now, a friend of mine said, you know, you're not going to go far in show business like that. You got to have class. You're going to be. We want to make it to Vegas. Well, how's this for class? This is also so people can see it in the back, and we'll all know when it's completely out from inside me.
In fact, you know, Jana, just for fun, where's my thing now? Yeah, just for fun, let's see. How can I do this without infecting?
Just a little more. Folks, that's the conclusion of my lecture demo. I'm going to say a few things before I go, however. Some of these things which I've covered. If you're interested in bizarre entertainment at all, you better just take a look through this book, even if you don't choose to buy it. Once again, my name's Zamora, the Portrait King. Thank you for attending this very
Accept no substitution. That's Zamora, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to just do one last thing. This is not really a day's meeting. We're going to do something fun to finish off here. Where's Jules? Where's the Lizard Man? You're good? Where's Aaron?
Come on, you pussy.
Yeah. We're going to do a little kind of a contest here. We're going to do a ballet contest at one time. I don't know what happened to that whole idea, perhaps next year. And we're going to do a little contest here, a straight jacket escape contest.